What's up, guys? Today we're going to go over 5 things that you need to make every choke tighter and more effective. 1, access to the neck. 2, compression. 3, rotation. 4, tilt. And 5, stabilizing the body. Now, everybody knows 1 and 2. You need access to the neck and compression. Those are no-brainers. 3 and 4 are often overlooked because they result a lot in neck cranks, and people write those off as strength moves and write it off as being used by people who are generally unskilled. Number 5 is stabilizing the body, and this will change a lot depending on which type of choke that you're actually trying to apply. So let's get into it. Okay, so now we're going to start running through the bullet points. Access to the neck, compression, rotation, tilt, and stabilizing the body. We're going to use the rear naked choke just for demonstration, but these things all apply across any type of choke that you try to apply. So number 1 is accessing the neck, which that is going to be a little bit more specific, like I said, to the type of choke. So how you access the neck will change. Basic access to the neck means that I've got to somehow pick Austin's chin up from his chest and get my forearm, my wrist, and my elbow all the way in there and forming a tight seal around his neck. So when we do this with the rear naked choke, the most basic common way is to punch behind the ear, and I like to actually, go ahead, tuck your chin, Austin. I like to allow him to think he's keeping my hand out of his neck. I'm gonna make him rotate his neck, and I'm gonna use my head right on his head, and I'm gonna push, 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 and use my head to force his chin out. Now, if he doesn't decide to cooperate and he keeps his chin down and he just keeps fighting the choke, I'm going to go ahead and just neck crank him. Neck crank is always a viable option. Don't let anybody make you feel like it's worthless because it's a strength move. That's bullshit. So we're going to start off, most basic attack is gluing my shoulders to his back and using my thumb knuckle to dig in behind the chin. He's going to tuck his chin tight, and I'm going to allow him to rotate until my forehead, right about here, attaches to his ear. And now I'm going to anchor my hand. Tuck your chin. Even if he's got his chin in there, I'm going to keep walking my fingers in until he's looking over his shoulder. At some point, he's not going to want to fight this, and he's going to give up, and he's going to allow me under the neck. Now from right here, I've got access to the neck. But access to the neck, just touching his neck, is not enough. When I make connection to the neck, I want to make sure there's a complete tight seal around it. I don't want there to be any gaps. That's going to affect what type of squeeze I'm going to use. So normally, most commonly, you see everybody wanting to get the elbow super deep in here. Now I've got complete contact from my shoulder all the way around to my forearm and my wrist, and using my head and my chest to form the backside of the seal. I want no gaps here. That's going to make my squeeze much more inefficient. So from right here, I've got access to the neck, and now if I just add a plain squeeze, it can be either palm to palm, figure 4, doesn't really matter. Focusing mostly on just squeezing, you'll notice it will take a lot longer if I only use number 1 and number 2, which is access to the neck and compression. It'll take much longer to get the choke. Yeah, a little bit more strength involved too in order to apply that squeeze enough to actually get the tap. We're going to add now our rotation and our tilt, which these are really overlooked. Like I said, most of the time when you add rotation and tilt, it becomes a neck crank. Oh well. It makes your squeeze much more efficient though. So again, we come in, we get deep, and now instead of just adding compression, which is just my squeeze straight in, I'm going to add some sort of rotation with my elbow, either back towards the choking side or forward towards my supporting side, depending on how he reacts. So for right now, we're gonna have him tuck his chin and follow my hand to the right, facing my choking hand. Now from right here, if I can keep his head tilted or rotated, facing the same way that I'm taking the choke, I'm going to support his head here, and now it doesn't matter how you decide to lock up your choke. It can be figure four or palm to palm, figure four, or just single arm choke. For right here, I'm going to add a little bit of rotation with my wrist and trying to move. Go ahead and pick your chin up here. Trying to move his Adam's apple off to the side here. So I'm actually taking my wrist, and as I turn his head, I'm going to imagine I'm trying to roll his trachea off to one side. And you'll start seeing a little bit of a lurch when you start hitting that gag reflex. So the rotation actually gives you better access to the neck in this case. So we come in, I'm going to let him come with me, and even though I don't have it clean, I can still just anchor off here, and now I add rotation in, and you see he's ready to tap. I'm pushing further in, and then I compress back. So I actually do a little bit of a rotation in, forward, and then in, back. But the main focus is the way that his head is facing. So now let's say I come in, and he turns his head towards my elbow. Yeah. Now he can still tuck his chin in a little bit. I don't have a complete tight seal here. Go ahead, tuck your chin, tuck your chin. Yeah. And he's fighting it a little bit. From right here, if I lock this up, doesn't matter how I do it, I'm going to add rotation in the way that he's facing. As long as my hand is anchored somewhere on his shoulder, to my hand, or to my bicep. So he's tucking his chin. Go ahead, tuck, tuck, tuck. I'm going to rotate towards the way that he's already facing, and that will make my squeeze much more effective and make up for the lack of access to the neck, the lack of a complete tight seal around his neck. So now we're going to add on to our rotation and our compression with tilt, and this will make our squeeze that much easier if I can get all three of these pieces. So I've got access to the neck. Again, it's going to change depending on what type of choke and how he's defending, how you gain that access. So I've got access to the neck, and we're going to go ahead and assume that we have full connection, which we're all the way under the elbow or under the chin and tight around the neck. I'm going to rotate his head with my hand when I come through for my rear naked choke. I'm going to rotate his head, and now I'm going to imagine folding his neck forward over my forearm. Good connection with the shoulders or the chest to his shoulders. From here, I figure four in, and I'm going to rotate his head. Now, as I squeeze, I'm pulling my elbows back and squeezing in forward. That really makes the squeeze that much easier. We're going to go ahead and let him tuck his chin now, and we're going to rotate his head. And a lot of time, this will be what happens when he's really fighting it. He's tucking his chin down. He's determined not to let me touch his face here, or touch his neck. He's going to defend with his face. Yeah. Now, I'm going to pop in. I'm using my head for back pressure. Pushing, pushing, pushing. And I'm not going to allow him to straighten his head out. I'm going to keep tight. Now, as I go figure four grip, I'm rotating. I'm pulling my elbow back, and then hunching my shoulders forward over him. Yeah, it's pretty tight. It makes it so much easier. So now we're going to go over if he faces the other way. It's the exact same thing. So as I come in, I punch my hand in. He turns to look and tries to bury his chin into my elbow. No big deal. Sometimes I'll even let him get his chin in there. I still have access to the neck. I still have my shoulder against his right side, his carotid on his right side, and I have my forearm against his carotid on his left side. So I really don't need to be on the trachea for this choke. I'm going to rotate and tilt, immediately getting the tap. I don't have to squeeze very hard. I'm kind of actually slowing it down in order for you guys to see this. Otherwise, the tap would happen quite quick. So if, let's say I don't even have access to the neck and we go neck crank, I can actually still get a good choke if he keeps his chin completely down. I have to really emphasize rotation and tilt and compression. So all of those things have to work together in order to make up for the fact that I have a lower or a smaller area attaching to his neck, smaller access to his back or his neck. So I'm gonna he's gonna tuck his chin. I'm gonna rotate him in here. Let's say I don't get under his chin. I'm gonna make sure I focus on squeezing tight in here. If I rotate you far enough over here to your chin is going over your shoulder, everybody's experienced this trying to back out of their driveway in the morning. They're looking over their shoulder and then they look forward again and they've got spots in their vision, right? You're cutting off this side of the carotid artery. You're not able to get the maximum blood flow to your brain. So even just yourself, just turning, this is actually affecting your blood flow, which is a part of the choke. So I don't need access to this side. I just come in tight here, and now we'll add mostly rotation and tilt forward. And now, are we getting the choke or just the neck crank?
The choke and the neck crank.
Choke and the neck crank. So I really don't care if I get a neck crank or a choke or a combination of neck crank and choke. If I can get a neck crank and choke combination, that's more pain for him, that's more things for him to deal with, and it's more incentive for him to tap. It makes it much easier on me. So I don't care if I get a neck crank involved. I actually prefer it. So now we're going to go into stabilizing the body. If I go for a rear naked choke or any other type of choke and I lean with my body and I allow his body to move with me, he's actually absorbing some of the squeeze. It's making my squeeze much more, it's much more difficult for me to apply my squeeze. So let's turn to the side here. If I get my choke here and I go to pull and stand up, he fights it for much, much longer. You see this a lot in actually in standing guillotines. People get a guillotine, go ahead, turn around, hands and knees here. And for right now, since we're lower, we're going to go ahead and just do it from our knees here. A lot of times people get the neck and they stand up and they pull the body. Well, if he can go with me, I don't get the choke. So whatever choke it is, we need to stabilize his body. So let's turn back around, face the camera. With the rear naked choke, that means keeping his shoulders in place here, not allowing rotation of the shoulders or tilt of the shoulders in any way, okay? So I'm using my body and my elbows. I'm gonna make sure that anytime I have somebody's back, and this is actually 90% of your back control, since we're talking about just the rear naked choke, connection with my sternum to his spine, that is 90% of your back control. Your hooks really don't matter all that much. Those are secondary controls. So even if I don't have my hooks, my seatbelt grip or my breakdown grip, which is a modified seatbelt, is most important in order to keep my shoulders glued to his, or my chest glued to his shoulders, and not let there be any space. And using this elbow, this top elbow, is actually part of the squeeze. Now, using my head as part of the squeeze, kind of anchoring my chin into his trap muscle and pulling him into me and shrugging my shoulders up. Now, you have complete connection. Whatever my shoulders do, his shoulders do. So, as long as I keep my shoulders square now, and I don't allow my shoulders to tilt or rotate, then his shoulders can't tilt or rotate. So, from right here, we dig in, stabilize. I add the rotation, tilt. Whoa. Yeah, that one came on fast. I didn't try to exaggerate it so much for the camera. Now, we're gonna do it one time with the chin down again. So, if I push and I don't have good connection with my back and I'm not stabilizing his body, he'll just kind of spin out of it. Yeah. So even if I have a full lockup, and if I just allow him to turn his shoulders, he can just kind of turn into it and now I've lost it. So I've got to keep his shoulders square. Tuck your chin. Even if he's fighting it and he makes me rotate his neck here. Yeah, go ahead and try to turn out of it. Yeah, even turn this way. Yeah, try to rotate your body. Yeah, I've got to fight to keep his shoulders square. If at any point, even if his chin comes over and he's able to open his shoulder up, I've lost my choke. Anytime, especially for the rear naked, if his spine is not on my sternum, I'm not going to choke him. I need to stabilize and keep this connection. Okay, so we're going to go through all of them one more time. Access to the neck, compression, rotation, and tilt. So access to the neck, that'll change depending on what choke you're going for. So we'll kind of gloss over that one. And let's go compression, rotation, and tilt. Those are the most important ones. So We get access to the neck. Doesn't matter which way he's facing. If he's facing towards my choking hand, I rotate towards my choking hand. Yeah, and you can hear him go. And really, it's really uncomfortable. He's really relieved every time that I let go. It doesn't matter if he's looking away from my choking hand. I'm going to rotate towards that side. Good. Takes a little bit of time. Now we're going to add the tilt. Doesn't matter if the chin is in, doesn't matter if the chin is out. We're going to go here. I rotate using my head as a part of the squeeze. I've got the rotation. I'm adding rotation and tilt. Same time I add my compression. 5 things to make your chokes tighter and more effective. Oh, my legs are tired.